Over the years, we have gotten to see several comic book characters go through incredible physical transformations in order to transform into their alter egos. But sometimes the transformation is downright terrifying for one reason or another. Welcome to Top 10 Nerd. I'm Andrew Boyd, and today we will be looking at the top 10 terrifying comic book transformations. Let's dive in. Number 10, Deadpool. To ease our way onto this list, I figured we'd start with a less intense one. Wade Wilson was a Canadian who moved from Canada and joined the Special Forces and later became a CIA assassin until he fell in love with the mutant Vanessa Carlyle. Things were good for a while until he developed 34 inoperable cancerous tumors. He left Vanessa and returned home to die. He was recruited into the infamous Weapon X program and given a healing factor which caused the cancer cells to multiply, leaving him hideously disfigured. This disfigurement varies a bit on its intensity depending on the version of the character, with him running the gamut between somewhat lumpy to full-on Freddy Krueger. Personally, I prefer when Deadpool's deformity looks as gross as possible, as it's a big part of the character and why he typically keeps his face hidden by his mask. Deadpool's deformity in the comic books has been known to cause the characters who see it to scream, faint, or sometimes even throw up at the sight of it. Number 9, Vampire Batman. This one is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. In Batman and Dracula: Red Reign, Batman fights Dracula and is transformed into a vampire. He is able to control his bloodlust and continue to protect Gotham until the events of the sequel, Batman Bloodstorm. In this book, the Joker ends up killing Catwoman, causing Batman to finally snap and feed on the Joker. He has a stake driven through his heart to prevent more bloodlust, but it actually only puts him in a coma, and he is revived in Batman Crimson Mist when Gotham is overwhelmed by crime. Unfortunately, his condition has worsened, and he has lost whatever was left of his human mind, and he goes about hunting down and feeding on his entire rogues gallery, leaving a trail of carnage and destruction in his wake. Things get even worse by the events of Countdown Presents The Search for Ray Palmer, Red Reign #1, when we learn that he has stopped only going after bad guys and is now attacking anyone he comes across, and is actually responsible for the deaths of this universe's Dick Grayson, and is assembling his own vampire bat family. Number 8, the Wendigo. The Wendigo is a figure from indigenous folklore that was first adapted to Marvel Comics in Incredible Hulk number 162. The curse of the Wendigo is something that happens when a person engages in in the Canadian wilderness. The curse causes the person to transform into a vicious creature who has an insatiable hunger for human flesh. In its first comics appearance, the Wendigo is a man named Paul Cartier, who goes on a hunting trip with his friends Georges Baptiste and Henri Clouzot. When they are attacked by wolves, the trio are forced to hide in a cave where Henri dies. After 4 days trapped in the cave with no supplies, Georges wakes up and finds Paul eating his friend's remains, inadvertently giving himself the Wendigo curse. Over the years, Wendigo and Hulk clashed several times before Paul's friend George managed to transfer the cure to himself, freeing his friend and becoming the second Wendigo. This Wendigo was eventually defeated by Alpha Flight with the help of Wolverine and Nightcrawler. In the years since, several different Wendigos have cropped up in Marvel's Canadian wilderness, each one more dangerous than the last. Number 7, Frankencastle. The Punisher is a scary guy at the best of times, but for a brief window he was actually even more spooky. After Frank was killed and sliced to pieces by Daken, Man-Thing and the Moloids recovered the bits and took them to the Legion of Monsters and everyone's favorite character in all of fiction, Dr. Michael Morbius. They turned Frank into a patchwork Frankenstein's monster type creature in hopes that he would help them fight the Hell's Guard. He refused at first, but after witnessing their atrocities firsthand, used his new size and strength to help the Legion of Monsters. His time as a big old monster was cut short when he was returned to normal by Elsa Bloodstone. Number 6. Spider-Man becomes a Spider-Man. In the Changes arc that ran in Spectacular Spider-Man Volume 2, issues 17 through 20, Spider-Man went through a rather awful transformation. A bug-themed villain known as the Queen had decided that she wanted Spidey to be her mate, and rather than sliding into his DMs, she gave him a kiss that caused the spider DNA in him to go haywire. Over the next few issues, issues, he went through a transformation not dissimilar to Jeff Goldblum's Brundlefly, as he slowly started to transform into an actual giant spider. At first, the transformation was relatively subtle, with him growing extra eyes that he could hide with a pair of sunglasses, but it wasn't long until he got brown and fuzzy and sprouted some extra arms and fangs. In the final issue of the arc, he is full on just a giant spider, but things somehow get even wilder when the spider keels over dead and a naked Peter bursts out of the arachnid's body, effectively giving birth to himself. Once out of the spider, Peter has additional spider powers such as organic web powers, causing him to no longer need his web shooters. This comic came out in 2004 in the midst of the Tobey Maguire films, so I'm guessing this was done in an effort to make comic Spidey more like his film counterpart, but there had to be an easier way to give Peter new spider powers than making him go through all of that. Number 5. Joker takes his face off. I'm not gonna linger on this one too long. In the Death of the Family arc, the Joker decides it's time to update his look. He enlists the help of the villain Dollmaker and allows him to remove the Joker's face. Joker then escapes before returning a year later and stealing back his face from the police evidence locker. He crudely straps it back onto himself and begins a plan to kill all of Batman's sidekicks so he and Bats can get back to basics. There's a moment where he tricks the Bat family into thinking he's taken off all of their faces, but that turns out to be a ruse. So yeah, he took off his face and it looks pretty spooky. What more can I say? Number 4. The Thousand. The Thousand was a Spider-Man villain who only ever made one story appearance. Granted, it was a very memorable appearance. Carl King was one of Peter Parker's classmates from kindergarten all the way through high school. Whenever Flash Thompson was busy, it was Carl that was making Peter's life miserable. Carl was on the same school field trip as Peter when he saw the radioactive spider bite Pete. He followed Peter home thinking he'd get to see Peter get sick or something, but instead saw him leap out of the way of a car and onto the wall, discovering his spider powers. Carl followed Spider-Man's early career and became jealous, thinking that it should have been him that got the awesome powers. So he broke into the lab to try and replicate the incident, but of course had no idea how to irradiate a spider. The original spider was being kept as a specimen, so Carl figured his best bet was to just eat it. This transformed him into 1,000 sentient spiders who absorbed his consciousness and ate his insides, leaving nothing but a hollow skin. He soon transferred to his parents, killing them, and then spent the next few years hopping from body to body. Him transferring between bodies is a pretty disturbing sight, and his narcissism and hatred for Spider-Man makes him a terrifying villain, even if he only appeared in one story before dying. Number 3. The Immortal Hulk. I will always recommend Immortal Hulk to anyone who is a fan of the Jade Giant for several reasons. It brings Hulk back to a darker, more character-based approach, it has a great supporting cast, the art is great, and it's scary as hell. Throughout the series, plenty of characters go through awful transformations, like Rick Jones's weird two-headed abomination, or Absorbing Man getting torn in half. But today I want to focus on this book's approach to Banner's transformations into the Hulk. Typically, when Banner hulks out in the comics, the transformation is relatively simple. His skin turns green and he starts to swell up to Hulk size. He's just growing. It looks painful, and I'm sure it would be terrifying to see in real life, but Immortal Hulk takes a slightly different approach. In these transformations, it's like Banner and Hulk are bursting out of each other. A mouth will appear out of a shoulder, and an arm will sprout out of a stomach, and the panels showing the transition between the two characters are brutal and terrifying. Number 2. Zombie Superman. I've talked about Marvel Zombies a few times recently, and I really am just not in the mood, so instead I'm going to talk about the DC equivalent, Deceased. In this mini-series, the anti-life equation infects the computer screens of the world, causing everyone who sees them to turn into a shambling corpse that wants to bite people to spread the infection, or, failing that, kill everyone in sight. A lot of the DC heroes are transformed with lethal results, including most of the Bat family, Batman himself, Hal Jordan, and The Flash. But as scary as these versions of the former heroes are, there are none as pants-crappingly terrifying as Zombie Superman. Once Superman gets infected, he goes on a rampage, leveling cities with his heat vision and not holding back his powers at all. Wonder Woman has to forge a magic sword of kryptonite to try and stop him, and it's still not enough. As a pair of space arcs tries to get away, Superman pursues, planning on ending the species. It isn't until the entire Green Lantern Corps shows up that he relents, calculating that he can't beat them all. Instead, he flies into the sun to feed off of it so that anyone left on Earth will soon die. And you thought Justice Superman was scary. Number 1. The Batman Who Laughs. When the Joker of Earth 22 found out he was dying, he decided to go on one last spree in order to attempt to send Batman over the edge. He killed all of the other supervillains in Gotham as well as Jim Gordon. He blew up several buildings and captured Batman. He forced the Dark Knight to watch as he ended the parents of kidnapped children right in front of them before infecting them with Joker toxin. In order to stop the madness, Batman broke free and broke the Clown Prince's neck. When he did this, Batman was inadvertently exposed to a Joker toxin, which corrupted his mind and gave him the Joker's sick, twisted sense of humor and murderous desires. This Batman went on to kill the Bat family as well as the entire Justice League before using his evil cunning to take over and destroy his world. He was recruited to lead the group of evil Batmen in the evil cosmic being Barbados' plan to destroy the multiverse, but was defeated when the main universe's Batman did the one thing the Batman Who Laughs could not predict, and teamed up with the Joker to save the universe. Any other terrifying transformations we didn't mention here? Let us know in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe for more Top 10 Nerd.